Business is simple. It's just not easy. We focus on three things to help you run and grow your business more easily: talent, sales, and how to scale. This is the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. Hey everyone, Bryan Whittington with this episode of the Talent, Sales, and Scale Show. We have Matt Millen, co-founder of regie.ai. He's banging it out. I mean, this guy, he's been hanging out with people like Tony Robbins, working for him, was with Outreach, owned his own company on go-to-market strategies, growth strategy, turned around accelerators, and now he's co-founder of regie.ai, and it's a pretty cool platform. It's a way that we can create content to scale or leverage some different ways of creating content. So pretty interesting topic. So with that said, welcome, Matt.
Well, welcome to you, my friend, and great to be here and, share some stories.
Yeah, really looking forward to this. So I always like to ask, why in the world should we listen to you? Yeah, so you worked with Tony Robbins. Yeah, so you worked with a small little place like Outreach and has done amazing things. But why should people listen to you on this topic?
Well, they'll have to decide if they want to listen to me, but here's the story. I started selling in 1987. So if you're keeping score at home,
you're just getting started.
Yeah, that's before corporate email and the internet. So I had a front row seat to the infusion of technology into the selling process and being responsible for helping teams win over the 34 years or so I've been doing this. As a leader, we're always looking for ways to solve the problem at hand. Like, how do we help teams win? And at first we had sales automation come in, years ago. Then we were able to, using some of these products where we're listening to our conversation intelligence. And so we're constantly looking at, like, how do we help our teams win more and get that competitive edge? And one of the things that became very clear to me is that great sales content was the next problem, was the next frontier. And what I mean by that is email is noisy, it's everywhere. Yet we still rely on that for a big part of our outbound prospecting. And how do we stand out today? How do we feed the Outreach, the Sales Loft, and all the other sales engagement platforms with high engaging, high performing sequences and cadences, and supporting those one-off emails to help our reps win more?
Got it. So, and you're right. I mean, you and I both remember the old days whenever the phones didn't even have put button, but dials, right? At least we had the push button at work, and then you got through automation, and then we get through sequencing, and now we're through, Chorus AI or Gong to be able to get that intelligence there. So, with content creation, let me do a quick aside and then come back to the topic at hand, which is creating of content. How important is the creation of content for specific go-to-market strategies?
Well, like anything, it's critical. Like everything we do today is critical in supporting what we do, how we do it, and like how we thoughtfully put that together to support ourselves and to support our teams. Messaging, like, is the last frontier. Like it's one of the few things that we still control. So and we'll get into, like, what's my hack. But my hack is identifying what you control and then mastering it. So there's only three things that we control. Number one, it's the words that come out of our mouth and the information or content that we put on behalf of our mouth through email and other written communications. The second thing that we control is our actions and our activities that we do throughout the day. And then the last thing that we control is our attitude toward the business. Like, that's what we control. We control what we say, what we do, and how we think about our accountability towards our job, since we're talking about work today. That's what we control.
I'll tell you what, Matt, that is so simplistic, and it really nails it, doesn't it? I mean, those are the three main pieces, to the point where Matt even had to correct me. It's Regie, not Regie AI, it's regie.ai, right? Because messaging matters, branding matters, and keeping that consistency matters, consistency of attitude, consistency of action. So well said on that. So let's get into the content side. So at the highest level, what type of content would you suggest that and let's keep this for the individual contributor, and then we'll maybe talk a little bit about the higher level. So let's talk about that individual contributor. What type of content should that individual contributor be creating?
Well, let's maybe step back a little bit, because in many cases, the individual contributor doesn't need to create content. Great content should be provided to them. So for instance, if you're hiring people right out of college or earlier in their career, having the expectation that they're going to write amazing content, whether it's a sequence, a cadence, whatever it may be, isn't a fair expectation. You didn't hire writers, you hired sellers. So like our thinking is that somebody in the organization has the accountability for making sure that the team has great sales content to work with. That shows up in the form of your sequence or cadence, usually 17 steps over 23 days, and maybe 7 or 8 emails in there, some automated, some manual. There's going to be your social touches. What do you do with those? There's your call steps. Do you have a great call script for those? These are all think through. Beyond that, you're writing one-off emails 21% of the week. Are you supported in your one-off email writing? We're adding attachments like social proof, case studies, infographics, reports, things that help provide additional credibility to our communication. So do we have a good arsenal of those available? So like, I think of communication, not what the frontline reps need to be able to create, but what they have access to utilize.
So I'll push back a little bit on that. So I agreed with you. However, that's going to come at the larger phases. So I'm thinking of that co-founder. I'm thinking of that first sales hire that has to figure all of this out. And even I found a ton of times, Matt, not that this should be the way, it's the way it is. These poor salespeople are out on the front lines and they're having to create this stuff. So I'm thinking of that person. If you're speaking to that person that doesn't have an awesome place like an outreach that has all of those, all the wherewithal to create that, what are the must-have, right? If I have this triage toolkit for my content creation, what would that look like?
Well, you're bleeding content creation and execution. So outreach is execution. Outreach is going to serve up your tasks. Outreach is going to automatically send your automated emails for you. Outreach doesn't create your content. Outreach is where you conduct your work. So what I would say is, if you have any of your listeners that consider themselves to be a modern revenue organization, today you need to have a CRM. Today you need to have a sales engagement platform, and you need to be thinking about the content that you're putting into it, period. Even if you're a party of one, there's still tools out there that you can leverage, and you have to do the hard work. Someone has to do the hard work of thinking through your content strategy. Let me be specific here. I call them the 3 Ps. P number 1, persona. Who do we sell to? Like if you're a party of one or a party of 1,000, somebody built a product that solves a problem for somebody. Who is that? Like, who in the organization gives a crap about what you do? That's who you sell to. That's your first P. Your second P is the problem or the pain point that you address. The third P is your value proposition. Why you? So the first P is to make sure that you have rapport. The second P is to make sure you have relevance. And the third P is to make sure you establish credibility. So somebody has to do that work. Otherwise, you get very vanilla, very homogenized messaging that doesn't pierce through the noise.
Wholly agree, right? So, and we're in alignment there. But I'm suggesting if I'm in that triage toolkit, right, and I'm having to do those 3 Ps, I've got my CRM, I've gone out and got my automation tool, whatever million ones that are out there. What are maybe my keys? Do I need to do? Should I focus on email first? Should I focus on scripting first? Should I focus on the marketing resources to lend credibility? I guess that's my question if I'm not asking it well.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking why. The place to start isn't about you. It's about your buyer persona. So for instance, how does your buyer persona prefer to receive information? Do they use email? Do they answer the phone? Are they on LinkedIn? Depending on who you sell to, different touch patterns will be much more appropriate than others, and certain steps won't resonate at all. So like, again, it's really understanding who you're selling to, how do they get information? How do they make decisions?
Now, not to make assumptions here, but I'm guessing you probably have some good insights. If I'm that person trying to identify the ICP within my buyers group, how would I determine whether or not they, the mode or channel that for outreach, right? Because I could be stereotypical that if I'm an IT, I'm not going to answer the telephone ever, right? Or I might be on LinkedIn, or so. How might I find out which channel to approach them in?
Yeah, and again, we're probably using very early stage examples here where we're learning. Talk to your personas. Like early on, talk to the people that you think you're going to sell to. Validate. Early companies will start validating by putting their product in the hands of who they think should be buying them, getting validation on use and fit. And then ultimately, once they land it, you start asking them questions like, how would you want to receive information over a solution like this? Where do you typically go? Or how are you typically informed on what's available? Like I would interview the people that you tend to sell to so you can meet them where they're at.
Yeah, and that's critical, right? So if you look, Steve Blank has a lot of good stuff on this, or Eric Ries, the lean startup, in doing those interviews. And I think from that, Matt, I don't want to speak for you, but my guess is out of those interviews, out of that initial, you're going to get their language, their jargon, what is going to then go into right content. Am I off on that?
No, you're right.
Okay, so we do that. We identify the ICPs, the personas. We've identified the likely problems that they're having, maybe even the alternatives that they're using today, and why your solution is going to be better. So from there, what do we do now? How do we start to create this content? What's the pathway that we should take?
Well, up until Reggie, you only had one option, and it was people. Like you could hire a professional services firm to construct your messaging. You could hire somebody internally, or you could just pass the buck internally until somebody's desk had landed on, would attempt to do it. The reason that we created regie.ai was to solve this problem with technology, because we thought there was a better way, a more efficient way, and a more scalable way to do it.
Now, when you and I were talking, I said, wow, this could be pretty interesting. I might be able to reduce my number of headcount and be more effective. And you pushed back pretty hard on that, like, no. So how would AI, because listen, I've seen AI in recruiting and everybody says, this is the next best thing. And you see AI in chat with the customer success, customer support. So how in the world can I, as the seller, I as the brand ambassador for an organization, right? So going up at that leadership level, how can I trust a regie.ai or another tool to be able to write content better than my team that is putting in process and following methodology and whatnot? How would I trust a technology to do that?
Well, first of all, it doesn't have to be better. So if you have a specialist on your team that does this, Reggie or AI has to be as good. If you don't have somebody on your team to do this, then it's better. So it really depends on where you're at. And what it's going to do is going to solve the problem at scale. Like Reggie doesn't call in sick. Reggie doesn't have competing alternatives on its desk. Reggie or any AI assistant is specifically tuned and trained to do the task at hand. We've uniquely attacked it from the building a sequence or a cadence, because nobody was doing that. And threading a conversation over 17 steps, 23 days, 7 or 8 emails, writing the call scripts, assisting with those social touches, was a really big gap.
Got it. So how, I guess without, and what I don't want to do, and I know that you don't want either, but without making this a regie.ai infomercial, right?
We don't do that.
How would we, who's doing this? Because I would think, because AI has to take just a ton of information in to get the learning process down, unless if I'm conflating that with difference between AI and machine learning, which I don't want to go down that path. But so who would have to develop this, and how would they be able to leverage a platform like this?
We did all the work. We've done all the work. It's very simple. for our clients to go in, a few simple inputs, whether they're creating a pain point, a value proposition, or writing a whole sequence, a few simple inputs, and the AI takes over because we've done all the work on the front end in the tuning and training of how it works. And look, I don't want to make this an infomercial either, but I would like to say, like, number one, like, you can trust the technology today. It's like indiscernible between what good AI does and what a person can do. AI can do it at scale. AI can do it much more cost effectively. And because of that, it opens up different opportunities. So, I talked to some customers where it could take hours, if not days, to write a really good sequence. Well, imagine if you could do it in minutes. And what does that open up for you? Well, it opens up now the ability to test at scale. Like, instead of doing some A/B testing, you could do what we call AZ testing, where you could test radically different approaches to that persona. Like, thinking about it very differently, because A/B testing, really presumes that you got it right and you just need to fine tune it. But who says you got it right?
And it also presumes that you're going to have the wherewithal and the patience to actually test the A before you go to changing the B through Z without the AI to support.
Well, it's pretty easy to do the A/B testing today, but most people aren't doing the AZ testing, like testing at scale. And one of the beautiful things about the modern revenue organizations today is there's so much data available. If you just think a few years back, Bryan, we used to largely go on habits and bias. We literally, like, what our gut tells us or what we've always done. And with all the different technology available today, we've replaced those habits and bias with insights and data. Like, we now know what to do. We now know what's better. Like, we have that information available, whether it's the actions and activities that we're taking, the conversations we're having, or the content that we're using. Now we have data that actually tells us whether or not it's working and how to make it better.
So is this AI then taking your whole portfolio of client messaging and finding out phraseology, kind of like a chorus or gong, where it's taking the phraseology and finding out what works, maybe subject lines that are better? Help me, walk me through, because if I'm just starting this out and with a couple of inputs, I'm kind of curious, how does it learn my specific instance?
Well, so a couple of things. Number one, if you're on Sales Loft or Outreach, we actually have through API, as all the content that you build is tagged. We can look and see how it's performing. So we can look at which keywords are driving engagement, which personas are engaging, which pain points are resonating. Like, what happens if you start with a question or end with a question? Like, we have a lot of great information that we can start using to optimize your content strategy. In addition, we're looking at millions and millions and millions of emails every month, extracting higher level, the top performing templates and subject lines. And we provide all this data for free every week through an insights report that we just publish what's working, because what worked last month doesn't mean it's working this month anymore.
100%, because as soon as one person figures it out and starts using it, everybody else quickly falls on. It's kind of like Microsoft and the fast follower. Okay, so in what you said, what's most important? Is it the words that we're using, or is it the actions that we're taking, meaning the amount of outreach? Is it quantity, or is it the attitude conveyed, tone, tenor, if you will, on that email that goes out? Because I'm guessing this is mostly AI, or excuse me, mostly email generated content.
We also produce phone scripts, LinkedIn posts, emails, connection requests. But let me say this, let's go back to what works. Think of a sequence as a stacking effect. So it's a series of touch points over a period of time that's designed to drive engagement through what's called the stacking effect. So the right emails, the right phone calls, the right social touches, and the right pattern at the right time will start to drive the law of familiarity, and then like contact happens. So, some people, it may be the third email, some people may be the fourth phone call, it may be a social touch, it may be a breakup email 17 steps later. Like, it could be any one of these, but all of a sudden, Bryan, I could be in your inbox. You got a couple of voicemails from me. You see, I've been on your LinkedIn profile, and I'm just going to send you an email, and you're going to go, how do I know Matt? You're just going to click on it and you're going to get my message. And because we've carefully constructed what you're reading, it's worded to you, whatever that buyer persona is. It's talking about something that's relevant to you and in a way that establishes credibility for my organization. And you might just either hit reply, you might just call back. But that's how you drive engagement, by going through the stacking effect. But to tell you, which touch point is the one that works, it's different for many, many people. But the point is, if you do the right things for the right time over the course of the sequence, you're more likely to drive engagement than you're not.
So it really gets to the consistency and following the process, being tied to the process, not the outcome. Now, back to the comment that I made earlier, where whenever we were talking previously about, hey, this isn't to reduce the number of FTEs, I guess, other than writing as good of a content as a salesperson, if I engage this AI, what am I expecting it to do for me? What's the benefit of, where's the return on investment? I have a couple of ideas what you're going to say, but I'd like to hear from you. If it's not necessarily to be able to do more with less FTEs, the most costly part of business often, usually, what's the benefit here?
Well, let's back up and just say, what are the scenarios where Regie makes sense? And the scenarios where Regie makes sense would be where they're not happy with the performance of the sequences or the cadences that they're running. Marketing and product marketing isn't happy with the content being used because there's a lack of connectivity between the messaging they want and the messaging that's happening. There's nobody to take this on, so stuff is stale. Like, there's a number of reasons. Each of those has like a different case. What we don't want to do is have anyone not have a job because of this, but you may not have to hire another content writer. You may not have to outsource the sequence writing. Your vanilla or your homogenized messaging is starting to become much more effective. So the ROI is going to be different based on what my customer is looking to solve and what their current state is.
Now, because there's a couple of battles out there, right? So if you see the couple of sides of the fence, I believe in quantity. I believe in customization. So where would this help me fall within? Would it be a both and? Would it be how's this thing help me here?
Yeah, so the emails that Regie writes for your sequences and cadences have personalization at scale built in. So for instance, one of the emails is a manual email where it's going to prompt you to go out to LinkedIn, Twitter, the prospect's website, and grab something and do some personalization. So it's going to prompt you, and it's going to create a manual task, not an automated email in that. And you can make as many or as few of those steps manual for additional personalization, as an example. So, if you're in SMB, you may be doing less personalization, more volume. If you've got a smaller base, enterprise, you're going to be, account-based, much more personalized, less volume, more value. So we have a number of different touch patterns that are optimized, by segments. We have one touch pattern we optimize for C-level, where we slow the engagement down over 60 days, where we can add more value and reduce opt-outs, as an example. So, we're thoughtfully addressing what we're looking to achieve and what are the best ways to do that.
Got it. So this is not necessarily going to help that SDR, BDR write the content. So there wouldn't be a brand new SDR, BDR leveraging this. This would be for a content writer coming out of marketing to be able to drive that sales development language or messaging, or maybe reduce the coaching from that sales leader on how to write the right script. It's up at that level, not at the front lines level.
Well, that's half of Regie is the content platform.
Okay.
That can be a frontline sales leader responsible for the content. It could be someone in marketing, also somebody in sales enablement. So it just depends on how the company is organized. The other half of Regie is we have a Chrome extension with all this functionality for the rep. So we provide an analyzer that gives you predictive insights into what you're writing, and you can write it with Regie. It looks at everything from spam words, which impacts deliverability. It's going to look at the IU ratio. It's also going to exclusively look at DEI, inclusion, and gender bias. So we're going to make sure that, we're not inadvertently, upsetting anybody, which is very important. And then there's a whole host of AI functionality that we provide to the reps, in constructing one-off emails or any of their communication.
Okay, and if I'm not mistaken, you're also using a personality tie that allows you to have that language communicated the way that receiver likes to communicate. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're correct. So we use DISC personality profiling. So when we're writing sequences, Reggie's looking at your buyer persona and then writing all the emails in the sequence and the preferred tonal patterns that we believe that the typical buyer persona would receive. So somebody in IT is going to be more data focused and direct, and HR can be more team oriented. So we'll use different patterns in the construction of those emails, again, to better reflect and better relate to who we're targeting. And these are all the little nuances and distinctions you make that can be the difference between engagement and non-engagement. Yeah.
Now, let's pretend that we didn't have a regie.ai, right? And if I don't have that, what are maybe some steps that I could take to start to build out this content, with that content writer or with the marketing leads or the sales leads? What should I be looking for there?
I mean, I think it just comes back to having somebody on your team that understands how to do this professionally. That's what they do. They build and they understand all the different components and pieces that go into creating effective and engaging, sales campaigns.
Now, so with that, all the components, you've been able to really do a nice job of, the 3 Ps, or here's the actions here. What are those most effective components that we should be looking for, that whenever we're hiring this person, what are the keys that we should be looking for this person to be able to do? Because we just laid out a lot, right? You have to consider their personality, their position, seniority, in that role, what's going on in the market. I mean, there's a ton of things going on. So what are the maybe key things that we should be looking at?
I mean, that's just it, experiencing writing for your buyer persona, experience and understanding how to effectively engage them.
Anything more than that, or?
No, I mean, it comes down to do you have confidence, in hiring someone that can drive the engagement, experience in writing sequences, experience, and it's not just the emails, it's, coming up with a compelling phone script and a voicemail. It's, what are the right ways for your social touches, whether you're doing a connection request, whether you're writing an in-mail, whatever it may be. It's just thoughtfully thinking through all the different steps that it takes and making sure that you're supporting your team. Now, this is all about supporting our team and ensuring that we're creating winning.
Now, is there any, for example, there's so many different ways that I could do an outreach for a script. Any type of methodology that regie.ai is subscribing to, or what's that methodology look like?
You mean for the phone script?
Yes.
So a couple things. So first of all, we always create a phone script specific to the persona. So when we push the sequence up into Outreach or Sales Loft, we actually push the phone script into the call task, into the call notes.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we're attaching the right script for that right persona. And we give our customers 3 ways to utilize phone scripts. One, many of our customers have written great scripts, so they can include those, they can import those right in the Regie, and we can attach those right to the sequence directly. Regie will prompt you through a process to write them, or we actually provide some templates for some of the influencers in the marketplace that are popular. So we provide 3 different ways to get phone scripts provided to the reps. Okay, I would say this, another great hack is to think about your phone scripts. And, it's one of those items, I don't need scripts, I don't do scripts, I don't believe in scripts. I believe in scripts, but I want to explain it this way, that there's 3 levels of mastering your phone script, or 3 levels of mastering what you do all day. The first level of mastering your phone script is what's called cognitive mastery. And all that means is you've memorized the words, like you know what to say. And then when I'm having this conversation with you, Bryan, all my energy is remembering the words I have to say. And it sounds canned, it sounds like a script, and it goes nowhere. The second level of mastery,
which reinforces that negative belief that scripts don't work.
Exactly. The second level, what's called emotional mastery. And emotional mastery is where you've got the words down, and then you can start putting some emotion, some conviction, some feeling into that communication, where you start to move your prospect toward a client, like you start to get them engaged. And so your unconscious mind has the words perfect, and all of your energy now is going into thinking about the conveyance of the emotion and the conviction, the passion you have for it. That's not enough because you're not present. You're so focused on what you're doing, not focused on being in the conversation. Right. So the third level of mastery is what's called physical mastery. And it's where you know what to say. You don't have to think about it. You trust yourself. You don't know how to do what you're doing. You have to think about it because you know how to do it. But that third level is like you're present in the moment, and then your conscious mind is fully available to deal with all the distinctions going on in that conversation. You can make all of your corrections and all of your adjustments in that moment because you trust the words, you trust the emotion. Now it's just about being present and being fluid in the conversation. By the way, I just demonstrated that by telling you about the three levels. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't think about how to feel. I could be in the moment with you and just say, like, the script's important, but not because it's a script, it's a map to success. Yeah. Like the other thing to think about with a script is, like, how many times do you get through your script completely like just free flowing? No, like there's interaction. So if you don't know like your path, Bryan could give me an objection or share with me a truth that I need to know about. I go there, and then most people, then the conversation goes from that point out, as opposed to coming back to the path you're on and then moving forward to where you're going again. So having that script really provides you with like this really clear path of where you should go, because that outcome doesn't change just because you had an objection or you shared a truth with me. I either address that or I don't, but I still come back and continue to move forward toward our outcome. Without a script, that's impossible.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to know, right? Because actors and actresses, they have scripts. Yeah. And you can be moved to tears from that script, but they're also allowed that leeway to ad lib. And however it goes, look at a politician, they come back to their talking points, and that's really what a script is. So let's pretend no one's listening, and I ask you a question, right? How important is the script versus the conveyance of confidence, good questioning strategy, and asking questions that really makes the person on the other end think through, wow, I hadn't considered that before, and it really stops me in the track. I mean, how important is that versus necessarily the words or even the technique used?
Well, let's use your metaphor for acting for a moment. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the lines. Like an actor knows exactly where to be on stage at any point in time. An actor or actress knows exactly what expression and gesture they're making. Like we always think about the lines. The lines are such a small piece of it. Yeah. It's where you are when you're doing your lines. It's how you look and feel and express and interact. There's so many different pieces. And actors and actresses know all of that, or they're not allowed to perform.
Right.
Like you would never pay, Broadway money, $1,000 a seat to see some crazy performance where they didn't know their lines, they didn't know the set, they didn't you'd never put up with it. But in sales, for some reason, which is one of the highest paid professions on the planet, we seem it's okay. And it's like, no, it's not okay.
No, and the thing is, right? So regie.ai, sorry, you're going to keep yelling at me, regie.ai, it can make these scripts, but really it's written in there. And then does it adapt based upon how that particular individual sales rep is using it? Is it listening to what that individual sales rep is doing or no?
No, that's where you'd be using your conversational intelligence.
Okay, so that's where, okay, got it. So it's put in there. If you don't have it through templating, and the AI, regie.ai can help you craft that. Then you move on to an email cadence or email sequence, and this thing's going to help you list that whole entire piece out. Any ideas there, right? Because you're going to hear all kinds of different things. You hear, how long should an email be? As long as it needs to be, right? And then you hear other people say, well, it can only be 500 words or less, or right. So what are we seeing? What's regie.ai showing us?
Well, first of all, it's a really good question. So the entire product is based on best practices. So one of the great things about Regie, it takes all the guesswork out of how long should my subject line be? How long should the email be? Most emails should be under 120 words and under 2 minutes of reading time. Like you should think about, like you can view all of our emails, like an inbox view. How does it show up in the inbox? So you can test the strength of your first line and subject line. We give you the mobile view. 62% of all emails are opened on a mobile phone today. So we need to understand that. And then there's reading level. Like most people don't know, but like most emails today should be written in a 3rd to 8th grade reading level. Now, the reaction, oh my God, that's so low. Well, all that means is there's no jargon, there's no overly technical words. Now, these are averages, but if you have a very technical buyer, you might want to exceed that. But we build in with all of our messaging options and our outputs, like all of our best practices, and then we give you an analyzer that actually shows how it showed up, like in terms of the word count, the readability, the reading time, all of this, again, the gender inclusion and bias, to make sure that you're really proud of the emails before they go out.
Yeah, and so we have the scripts that we're doing, the email cadences that we're doing, and then it's simply prompting us when to do the social touches. It's not necessarily giving us the exact language to use on the social touches. It's identifying, hey, is it identifying?
Like it depends what you're doing. Sometimes you follow content, sometimes you do an in-mail, sometimes you do a connection request. We'll write the connection request. We'll write the in-mail with some input. So we can do that. It just depends what the workflow is, of the customer.
And how about for marketing pieces? Does this platform allow us marketing pieces to go out, whether infographics, whether case studies, or is that a little bit beyond scope at this point?
No. So we can attach infographics, case studies, reports.
Forgive me, not attach, meaning help to write.
No, not at this time. I'm always interested to talk about those opportunities, but we're not, right now, what we're doing uniquely is in that one-to-one selling voice.
Got it. Okay. So as we're looking at all of this, and maybe we finally have our CRM, we finally have our list building capabilities, and we know our ICPs and our personas, and we can speak to them. Well, actually, no, let me back up. When do we engage a platform like this? Do we have everything figured out already? Or whenever we're realizing, oh, crud, we have no idea what we're doing here, we need help, is that whenever we reach out?
Yeah, we typically work with larger organizations that actually have this problem at scale. So as an example, they have a SMB team, they have a corporate team or a commercial team, they have an enterprise team, they have 3 or 4 different solutions. And so you have this matrix of all of these different products by team, different messaging constructs are needed, multiple buyer personas. Many teams are going 3 deep. They go up to the C-level, the VP, and a director, and they'll whitewash a message against that, where each of those 3 positions has a different strategic field of view. They have specific problems that they're dealing with. So we would recommend talking to each one where they're at, not, usually smaller companies aren't ready for that yet. So we typically deal with larger organizations that have what we call the problem at scale.
So meaning your customer base is more that the larger organization, or you're selling to more the enterprise space?
Yeah, mid-market enterprise.
Is to whom you're selling, or your clientele?
No, well, both. So we sell to, and then our clientele can sell, to all the different markets.
Yeah, and so something that comes to mind as you've been speaking, I've been thinking to myself, my gosh, with more and more technology coming down the pike, how does that small company that, that isn't VC backed, that isn't maybe in the tech space, that has 80%, 60, 80% profit margin, how do these companies keep up? I mean, how do they compete if they don't have this type of technology?
So there's a couple of ways. So number one, I would just you should be budgeting $6,000 to $8,000 of tech per revenue generating employee.
Wow. So 6,000 to 8,000 per year per revenue generating employee.
Yeah, if you're gonna give them a CRM, you're gonna give them engagement, you're gonna give them leads, you're gonna give them conversational intelligence, you're gonna give them maybe some content management support. Like if you start adding it all up, you really want to you want to be competitive, and you don't want your sellers at a disadvantage. That's what you should budget today.
Okay, I was expecting a little bit higher than that. So yeah, because if you throw on,
you can always spend more.
Yeah, right. Okay,
always spend more. I'm just saying, you started off with lean and mean.
Yeah,
I would just say, you want to ensure that you're setting your team up for success. And then in all the categories, there's certainly starter companies. You could use a HubSpot instead of a Salesforce as an example.
Right.
You have different options. But the point is, you want to set your go-to-market team up for success.
Okay, so expect a $6,000 to $8,000 per revenue generating team member in addition to their salaries. And then what else? How else can that small to mid-sized company compete? I mean, with that, you're talking $500 a month, $600 a month is going to hit that. $650 a month is going to hit that. I would think that these larger organizations are probably spending upwards $1,200 to $1,500 a month per revenue generating employee, unless if they get such a discount at scale.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some volume incentives.
Yeah,
I'm just looking at. You can Google it. You can Google these ranges of what the average tech stack looks like.
Yeah.
I think for any company, if you're providing value to the world, you got to make sure you're pricing it fairly. And to be in business, you have to have a model that at the end of the day covers all the costs and yields a profit. So if you can do it, great. And if you can't, you have to reevaluate what you're doing and how you're doing it. And that's why some companies are product led. Some companies are sales driven. There's all different ways to go to market. So you have to think about what's the right model, what's the right go to market strategy for you.
Yeah. So let's. So whenever somebody's trying to pivot and start to get a little bit more sophisticated in using things like this, what would you say the biggest challenge or mistake that they typically make whenever they start to pivot into this type of technology?
Yeah, hiring people that don't know how to use it, just flat out. If you're gonna go into a certain market, hire people that know who have been in that market. If you're going to move into some technology, hire people that are familiar with the technology. The gap is in these cases, they're self-inflicted. So part of those hiring requirements should be knowledge of what you're selling and who you sell it to, knowledge of using the technology used to do the job, whatever it may be, because it's all about risk. It's all about risk mitigation. And no matter how much I like you, how much risk is there in hiring you if you don't know my market, if you don't know my product, if you don't know my tech stack, if you don't the more you don't know, the more risk I have in hiring you, when there is somebody out there that will know this.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes, one of the biggest things that we see, Matt, is, we do a recruiting specifically for sales and customer facing folks. And one of the biggest challenges that I see time and time again is that people don't keep up with learning. They don't keep up with what's out there, and they'll get scared of technology. And you can't get away from it. You have to embrace this. And the old days are gone. They are. There's no more relationship selling where you're going to go on a milk run. And if you think that that's ever coming back, even with post-pandemic, you're insane. So yeah. Any additional thoughts on that? Or
Yeah, I loved your thought, like people don't keep up with what's going on. I would actually say the problem's worse. I often find that people know what to do and don't do what they know.
Unpack that a little bit, because that really hits to your second piece of the three controls that you have, and that gets into actions. But I guess all ties into actions and attitudes, but unpack that a bit, please.
Yeah, like people know they have to make their phone calls. You know, there's a million things that are more important than making the phone calls. You know, people know to ask for referrals, but people don't ask for referrals. Like people know what to do. Like there's so little new training that's available. And then they go through training. Oh, that was just a reinforcement of what I knew. Yeah, but you weren't doing it. It's not what you know, it's what you do.
Yeah.
In fact, I was talking with my colleague this morning. We're putting some additional training together for our new hires. And we were talking about potential. And it's like potential has nothing to do with it. Like potential doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do. Like what you do is who you are. Not what you're capable of doing is not who you are. Only until you realize it. So like there's got to be this fine distinction. Like learning's great. Doing's better.
Yeah, at the end of almost every single podcast, I say, hey, learning for learning's sake is pointless. It's learning for application's sake. What are you going to take here, right? And you listen, I've been guilty of this. I read 24 books last year. Yeah, and which one did you really dive into and put into practice? Because it doesn't matter the quantity. It's what have you done? Have you changed your behaviors? How has your results changed as from what you've learned? So yeah, it's a painful truth.
I read 2 books that actually changed how I go to market. And I'll explain that at the end for you. So it's not just what books do I read, but I'm going to share 2 books that literally changed how I thought about my selling process.
Well, let's go into that right now, and I'll go to your business. I'll switch up my second question next. So what are those 2 books? I can't wait. I'm at the edge of my mat here that I'm standing on.
Now, the first is Experience Economy by Joseph Pine. And like the best example I can give you, if you've ever been to the supermarket and there's 2 lines, and one line, the guy very robotically, very efficiently, just scanning the items and packing the bags. And, people know it's going to move quickly, but in the other line, there's this woman, she's having a blast with her customers. She throws the noodles up and catches them, and you're laughing, right? But you understand, and like people will wait a little longer to stand in that line. It's the same food, it's the same price, but she's creating an experience, and people will wait for that. And we've put like an experiential. Like in our sales process, we make it a real experience where it doesn't feel like you're being sold or demoed or discovered. And with that, I read a book called The Power of Moment by the Heath brothers. And like the power of moments, like combined with that, like how do you create moments that people remember? Like how do you create moments that people remember? So if you combine that with the experience economy and how to make it fun and different, and then like, how do we create moments? So like when the demo's over or the call's over, like they're going to remember us for all the right reasons. So I took those 2 books. We've created like a really fun process, with our customers in mind, but doing it differently. We're reminding ourselves we're humans. Yeah, we got to work hard, love what we do. We want to have fun. And the more fun that we can inject into our job, the more that we'll attack it with zeal, and the more energy we'll have for it, and the more that our customers will be engaged with us. So I think it's important, read these books and think about, to your point, like how can I apply these learnings so I'm even better?
I love that, because and it ties back to what's already been proven. It's an older book now, but still I think relevant. It was a 2009-ish. The Challenger sale came out, where you have those commercial insights, and it's the sales process or the engagement there that really sets them apart. So I love that. So let's go into a best hack, whether it's for hiring for the right talent, which you already said. Make sure they have the experience and they know how to use this stuff, or how to affect sales or scaling of the business. Give us a good tidbit of info, please.
My favorite hack, especially for folks that are new in their job, like if you're representing a company selling HR software, you've never been in an HR department, or if you're selling robotics, you've never been on an assembly line. Like the best hack is to literally spend time with who you sell to.
Yeah.
Like literally understand what their day is like, what challenges they have. And then when you're doing your job to serve them, like you get it. Like you get it. And you can speak experientially. You can speak with a different level of conviction because you've been there, and like it's more visceral as opposed to some training you sat through in a PowerPoint you saw. Like no, whatever you've chosen to go do, like know it. Like there's no better hack than to know what the hell you're doing.
I love that, because so few people do that. And what you pointed out, it's not the demo, it's not the features and benefits. The reason people buy you is because, back to what you were saying earlier, is reduce risk. If they know that you understand them and they trust you because of the questions that you ask, and because you show relevant questioning techniques, because it shows my understanding of it, that's where you win. And you can't fake that.
Cannot fake it.
Nope. No, that's a great one. I love that one. Okay. Hey, resources that you might recommend. Oh, wait, we just hit that one. So
we just did that
experience, one. Economy, and power of moment. See, I'm reading down the list. Oh my God, I wasn't being adaptive.
I'll give you two more books, though. I'll give you two more books that are awesome. One, Monetizing Innovation.
Oh, okay.
This is a great one because many of us work for companies that are continue to roll out more features. And whether, like, how do you know which ones you should charge more money for? So it's like a really good way to think about monetizing all the great innovation you're doing. And then the last one, which I'm reading right now, so about 2/3 done, is called The Cold Start Problem.
Huh.
And it's like, how do you get the big flywheel turning? And it's really good. That one's by Andrew Chen. Monetizing Innovation is from George Takei. So
okay.
Great, all great books. I try to do a lot of audibles.
Awesome. Those are great ones. Now, what do you see the future holding? I mean, you pushed back on the AI taking over for people, but I mean, can we feel safe in sales? Or, I mean, are we going to get displaced by AI?
We should all feel really safe.
Agreed.
If you think about all the innovation that's happened over the years, as much of it is taking off the tasks that hurt our productivity. If you really think about it, like a lot of the automation is designed to either take low value tasks off our plate or to provide us insights to make us better. We believe like your best work is when AI and humans work together.
Yeah, I agreed with that, because it seems like the salesperson, the marketing person of the future is really one that is effective at problem solving and taking a bunch of disparate information and pulling that together to solve the problems for the people, and being able to speak to that in a whimsical way that they're going to understand these complex problems spoken in a whimsical way. So I don't know if you feel that's off base or not.
No, again, I think like we should be viewing technology as ways to give us like better guidance. Again, taking low value tasks off our plate so we can do the higher value activities, which at the end of the day are conversations between two people.
Agreed with that. All right. Well, hey, who should reach out to you? How should they do it? And why should people reach out to you here, Matt?
Well, only reach out if you want more of this. Like, don't if you don't. But look, I love talking shop. That's what I call it. And the best way to get me is on LinkedIn at Matt Millen. And, just message. And again, I love talking shop. And so if you have any interest in any of these topics, be happy to hear from you.
Sounds great. Well, Matt, I can't thank you enough. So, a couple of key takeaways here. One is learning for learning's sake is pointless. Learning for knowledge sake is exactly where it is. So thanks, Matt, for pointing that out. Remember the 3 Ps, personas, break it up. I can't tell you how many times that I've seen people screwing that up, saying the same message to all people, and there's different perspectives, points of view on everything. But one thing that you didn't really bring up, trigger points. How important is that, or is
Very important.
okay, and I'm guessing regie.ai isn't doing anything there, correct?
Of course we are.
Oh, you are? Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
So they're even pulling up trigger points for those personas, which help us to identify the second P, which is pain, problems and pains. And lastly, in that value prop. And then remember, words are only a small portion of what we do. It's the conveyance of those words, the passion. So do it, the actions with the right attitude, pull a little Tony Robbins out of there and you'll be good to go. So, hey, Matt, really enjoyed the conversation here today.
Likewise.
All right, thanks. Get after it, everyone, would you?